This virus is a demon, and we cannot allow this demon to hide, so says President Xi of China. Donald J. Trump, the 45th President of the United States, and a New York resident, says nothing is inevitable, and human action and human agency will get us through this. 77 WABC, this is War Room Pandemic, our New York City special report. Also, nationwide on the John Fredericks Radio Network, on americasvoice.news, the streaming service of the Trump movement. That's Dish, Channel 219, Newsmax TV, FM 99.1 and 103.9 in Chicago. Also throughout the world on the Nexus system, shortwave, medium wave, and AM radio throughout the world. Okay, a lot going on overnight on a reset. One thing to keep in mind, New York City is not only the greatest city in the United States, it is the greatest city in the world. And what happens in New York matters in every corner of the world. New York City in the 21st century has had three great catastrophes visited upon it. 9/11 in the first years of this century, the 2008 financial collapse, which was centered in New York City, and now the great pandemic, in the merger of the pandemic, the economic crisis that it drove, and now the financial crisis, the contagion of the financial crisis that is now building. And today we're going to go through all of that. Big news overnight. We're going to start in a second. We're going to have a guest, America's mayor, someone who's taken the city through a number of catastrophes and gotten to the other side, and that's what this is about, is getting to the other side. If you're going to go through hell, go through it as fast as possible, right? That's what we're talking about. Okay, I'm going to turn to my colleagues. I got Jack Maxey, Jason Miller, the comms director for the Trump campaign and the transition. Jack Maxey runs the mechanics of the War Room every day, all the analysis, the website, all of that. Hashtag War Room Pandemic is how you join the show. We want your comments. We want your observations. We want your criticisms. We also want your attaboys when we deserve them. And most importantly, we want clips and news of where you are, anywhere in the world. We're also on G News. We'll be up in Mandarin, the Mandarin language, subtitled later in the day for our audience in mainland China and in Hong Kong. Okay, last night, Jason, you've done this many, many times before. Technically, what happened, before we bring the mayor in, tell me what happened last night for New York City.
So last night, President Trump signed essentially the funding. They approved the New York Disaster Declaration, which allows federal.
That's a technical.
It's much more of a funding thing. So it allows whether it be states or tribes or local recovery efforts to tap into federal funding.
This is that $42 billion of the FEMA account, right?
Yeah, and that's really what it is. It's much more of a money vehicle for how you.
This is separate from the national emergency, which is another $50 billion that's available for localities.
And the FEMA fund is a nationwide fund of $42 billion for disasters. You have to look at this as if the Category 5 is now New York City.
Well, you still got the rain. I guess the wind's picking up, and
right.
It's not quite ashore. Okay, I want to go to the 50. So we had the national emergency. Now we had this. You got the Army Corps of Engineers up there. My point is the New York Post and the Daily Mail, which are two fabulous newspapers. You know, they had this headline, "The Army's coming in," just to make sure. What we're trying to do is make sure there's no panic. The only thing you have to fear here is fear itself, but we don't want ill-informed complacency. That's not really – it's really the technical support of the Army Corps of Engineers, correct, Jack?
Right. The Army is coming in to help. They are coming to help the city of New York identify surge sites and perhaps help them to convert them to use as hospitals and as isolation rooms. So this might be high schools, college dormitories.
Maybe the Javits Center. You don't know. A whole range of potential things for the surge capacity. Remember,
everything is on the table.
Hospital exhaustion is the key here. The gating event is the ICU units, the emergency room units, the PP&E, the protective gear the doctors and nurses use, and the teams of doctors and nurses. We're going to have later in the show from CNBC last night a very interesting interview with one of the head of neurosurgery at Lenox Hill Hospital. Let's bring in now America's mayor, Rudy Giuliani, the originator and founder of the Common Sense podcast. Last night he had on Steve Moore. It's a fabulous podcast. I'm honored to be the first person to do an interview on that podcast. Rudy, not just a counselor to the president, but I think a person that the nation always turns to in times of crisis, given his outstanding work he did during 9/11 and also during the financial crisis also. So, Mayor Giuliani, thank you very much for joining us, sir.
Good to be with you, Steve.
So tell us, give us an assessment. Where do you think we are, and this is New York City is becoming the story for the nation. Where do you think we are in New York City? How did you guys think about it at 9/11? And just give us your net assessment of where we stand today.
Sure. 9/11, we immediately suspected shortly thereafter there would be a biological or chemical attack. And I remember 4 days later, we had a meeting for about 4 hours with the CDC and everyone else going through all of our plans for what would happen. And smallpox was the worst of it. So the thing I would like to tell people, New York City has a very substantial hospital surge capacity. Meaning if we had to increase our hospitals, there are more options in New York City than probably any place else. We closed so many hospitals in the 80s and 90s, and I closed some of them, that we have empty spaces from hospitals that have not been yet destroyed, so that we could surge very, very quickly. We were planning to do that if we had been hit by smallpox. So I certainly wouldn't want to see that happen. But for a city, New York City is probably best positioned to handle something like that, with a lot of help from the federal government.
Where do you think, as you assess it today, right, in talking about the surge capacity, where were you think? How do you think? The headline in the Daily Mail, headline in the New York Post, and we should report the headline in the New York Post was from I think 10 a.m. yesterday to 6 p.m. We were losing one person per hour. Right. So where do you think we stand today?
Look, none of us like to see frightening headlines, but when they're true, you really can't object to them. And the fact is that is what happened. We went from 29 to 43, 1 per hour, and the public has to know that, because hopefully that's going to make us even more disciplined about what we have to do.
Mr. Mayor, I want to play a very brief clip from Dr. John Bokvar from Lenox Hill Hospital, who was on CNBC last night. It's a very brief clip talking about the time frame of things, and I want to get your reaction to it.
We need them tomorrow in our hospitals. Our ICUs are filled now.
Can you tell me more about this 2-week time frame that you just mentioned?
So the 2-week time frame, and I look at this as a very, very, and some of your guests have said the same thing. This is a pivotal time in American history. We need to be on social distancing and social isolation to make sure that we can handle the surge. The surge is happening now in New York.
Mr. Mayor, what's your take on what you're hearing as far as hospitals in New York City, ICU units? You talked about these additional spaces for ramping up, but what are you hearing about this 2-week window that we're hearing medical professionals throw out there?
Well, I don't know why this part of it isn't better organized. New York City is the only city in the country that owns 17 hospitals, 12 acute care hospitals, and the others are long-term hospitals. And it also has a group of hospitals that have been closed, like the Goldwater. I closed down 800 beds at Kings County Hospital. I mean, I could find you beds even now, even though it's 20 years later. So it seems to me that, I hate to say this isn't being coordinated properly by the mayor. He should have anticipated this in January. There should be a plan, actually, I had one, for expanding hospital capacity immediately. On 9/11, all the hospitals in the immediate area, of which are only 3, were overwhelmed 3-1 immediately. Seamlessly, those people were moved to hospitals in other places, and we were beginning to open additional hospital beds. We also opened additional hospital beds on the anticipation of smallpox and then anthrax. We didn't have to use them, but this should not be the major problem that it is, and I have to attribute it to the fact that this doctor is not being given the information from the city he should be given.
American, if we
Unless something terribly different happened, we should be ready for this.
Mayor, can we ask you to stay over for the next segment? I know you're very busy today. Can we ask you to stay over for the next segment?
Oh, sure you can. This is so important, and I'm so worried about my city. The governor has done a fabulous job, and the president, but we are without a mayor, and we can see the consequences of it.
Okay.
We're without a mayor who really functions.
Okay, Mayor Giuliani, America's mayor, why don't you hang on? We're going to take a short commercial break. All comments go to #WarRoomPandemic. This is 77 WABC, New York City, New York. We're going to return with Rudy Giuliani and the team in just a moment.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
77 WABC in New York City, New York. This episode 61. War Room Pandemic, our New York City special report. We've got Mayor Giuliani on the phone, America's mayor during the 9/11 crisis. My colleagues, Jack Maxey, Jason Miller. Jason, we've got some breaking news even in the break. What?
We do. New Jersey Health Commissioner Judith Parashelli has a statement out or was giving remarks saying that I'm definitely going to get it. We all are. I'm just waiting with regard to coronavirus. Also report that a communication staffer for Governor Cuomo has coronavirus. No word about the governor, but I'm assuming that the governor's probably okay or has probably been tested. But Mayor Giuliani, and thank you so much for staying over, I'd like you to take us inside the room here. It's been well documented and well told, the story about how you pulled everyone together and had the command center and how you're running the response during 9/11. Take us inside the room for this response against the coronavirus pandemic and what that's going to look like inside New York. Are you working CompStat like mechanisms to triage the situation in the hospitals? Take us inside the room.
Well, it's going to be, right now it isn't coordinated the way it should be. The mayor and the governor and the federal government should all be sitting in one room, in one command center, planning together. So when a doctor like this from Lenox Hill, who quite rightly says, my goodness, I don't know what I'm going to do, immediately someone should be assigned to call him overnight and explain to him what's available in New York City. What can be done? What can be done with the armories that we have? What can be done with the hospitals that have been have been discontinued that exist in New York City? And Javits Center is an answer, but you're better off going to a hospital. 9/11, we produced a command center and a family center in 48 hours that had never existed before. And they were world class. And New York City can do miracles. There are people right now not working that if you just called upon them would come here and build it for you. Governor Pataki and I had selected the Armory as a family center. Turned out the Armory was too depressing. The American Red Cross didn't like it. A lot of our people didn't like it. Within 2 days, we built a family center on the dock with the help of about 5 major construction companies, hospital construction companies. They worked 24 hours a day, and they did it. And we have that capacity. When you don't have a leader like a mayor, he doesn't call upon that capacity. Cuomo is doing 2 jobs right now, and he's doing them as well as he can, governor and mayor.
Okay,
but Cuomo doesn't know the resources of New York City the way the mayor should. He knows the resources of the state. And, of course, Donald Trump doesn't know the resources of the city.
So if you had constructive guidance, let's call it, constructive guidance for Mayor de Blasio, the governor, and the President of the United States, right now, where the city, the reality of the city, what would you recommend they do?
I would say wake up, go to work, go sit next to Cuomo, or go find the person you have, your deputy mayor for operations, who knows the most about what the city has available, and start contributing to this. Don't let things like we're going to have an overwhelming capacity of beds go unanswered. There are answers. New York City has the best emergency management plans in the country. They're all written out. get your emergency management guy to go explain that to people.
Let me ask
Most
you.
of the things that I hear of
okay,
that New York City can't do, it actually can do and has done in the past.
who is right now in the chain of command? Where does that emergency manager rest? Is that a direct report to the mayor? Does it report to the deputy mayor for operations? What's that chain of command?
I established the Office of Emergency Management. It didn't exist before me. That person technically may, in the chart, report to the team operations, but that person reported directly to me. He was at my morning meeting, every meeting for 8 years. It was two different people, Jerry Howard and Richard Shearer. Richard Shearer was the one during 9/11. Unfortunately, he's since deceased. He was on a status with the police commissioner, the fire commissioner, and because we have a tragedy a week and a catastrophe a month, he's a very busy man.
Last question, Mayor. We're running out of time, but I want to ask you, we know that you're very close to the president, and the president relies upon your advice. If you had to tell the president of the United States, looking at not just New York City, but the entire country, what would be your recommendations today to the president?
To do everything that you can to increase cooperation between the state and federal government so they're operating as one. And because the federal government is going to rely a lot on how well we function at local levels. I will say I am enormously impressed in the relationship between the president and Cuomo, the president and Gavin Newsom. If those three people can work together, anybody can work together. I mean, and they're doing a great job. But this has to be a team effort. I mean, we can have a great general. If he doesn't have an army, what's going to happen? And right now, New York City is kind of like the odd man out. The state, fine. The federal government, fine. California looks like it's well organized.
Has Mayor de Blasio reached out to you for any guidance or any observations you've done since you've gone through this exercise?
Mayor de Blasio has never reached out to me, even though I ran up until now the worst biological chemical attacks on New York City, not just 9/11. I ran West Nile virus, which got great credit internationally, and we ran anthrax, as well as 9/11. And I probably have about 20 people who are experts at every single one of these areas who could volunteer and do it right now. I mean, Rudy Washington took care of getting help for us from all over the country, brought in equipment, generators. I have a person who used to keep a list of every person who's homebound, people who depend on life-saving equipment in their home. Anytime there was a blackout, that list came right out, and we visited them. That capacity exists, I'm sure, right now, but the mayor is not telling people that. So you hear these frightening things. The city is going to be overwhelmed. The mayor shouldn't say, no, that's not true, because it may be overwhelmed. But he should say, if it is overwhelmed, we're the best prepared city in the country to handle it because we have a plan for people who are homebound. We have a plan for excess capacity for a hospital.
Mayor,
we have a plan for smallpox.
Mayor,
I want to tell you what that plan is.
Mayor, we thank you. Mayor, we got to bounce.
I almost had to use it.
Mayor, we got to bounce. We thank you very much for helping us out here. 77 WABC will be back.
Good luck.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
77 WABC. This is War Room Pandemic, New York City special report. Also throughout the nation on all of our distribution platforms. It's actually episode 62. We have over 4 million downloads. We'll get you all the details. The key, though, is hashtag War Room Pandemic. Also, you can go to our website, warroom.pandemic.org. 24/7 a day, we're putting up the most important news. I want to thank the team at 77 WABC, what is becoming the news center for New York City during this crisis. I want to thank them very much for making available us to do this show. Also, for folks around the nation, we're going to be getting also the more national and international aspects of both the pandemic, the economic crisis that it drove, and also now the financial crisis, the capital markets crisis. We cover all three of those, plus the geopolitics of it all. On this, we're going to get to some of the financial aspects and the economic aspects about your job, your income, and how we're going to survive this. But I want to go back. That was a pretty explosive interview. I want to say, we've been very complimentary about Mayor de Blasio. My opinion, just in covering this, that de Blasio and those guys are doing the best job possible. We would love to have Mayor de Blasio, maybe the Deputy Mayor of Operations, some of the details, emergency management. We want as many people on here giving information to the citizens of the tri-state area in New York City because, like I said, this is the third great event in the 21st century in the United States, the first being 9/11, the second being the financial crisis of 2008, and now this pandemic, economic crisis, financial crisis, and the heart of that. It's obviously throughout the nation, and the president's got to make some decisions, I think, in the next couple of days about the nation. But what's happening in New York City is going to drive the story, not just for New York City, but for the entire world. It shouldn't be lost on anybody that the New York Stock Exchange, all the exchanges are open, yet they're physically, the floors are going to be closed. All the traders are setting up operations in their homes or in remote locations. So the physical New York Stock Exchange starting Monday will actually be closed, but they'll be trading. The markets will not close. And as we say, Wall Street is a town without pity, as they brutally shed every asset class throughout the world responds to what they think is how folks are doing in getting through this pandemic. Okay, we're going to go to Jason Trennert in a second, but I want to go back to Mayor Giuliani. The one thing I found, and I think Governor Cuomo stepping up here, been very, very a terrific executive, good briefings, tough action. The president, when he does bold action, good things happen. Right, I think sometimes, like yesterday, I thought the press conference was too long. Should come in there, closing the border, doing this, bang, 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 get on with it. Mayor de Blasio, that's all got to be figured out. But I do think what Mayor Giuliani said, what's most important is got to be now intense coordination between. This is a team. This is a team event. It's not a solo event. It's a team event. You have a federal government response. There's tremendous assets. You've got the U.S. Army. You have the Army Corps of Engineers. We have the Navy bringing up the USS Comfort. You've got so many. You've got FEMA. You've got all the law enforcement. You got so much that you can bring. Department of Homeland Security, just such a deep bench. You got the governor's office. You got all Governor Cuomo's apparatus, and obviously you got a deep apparatus in New York City, which is, I have always been told, the emergency response for New York City is the model for the world about how you do.
And Steve, one of the things too, look, having worked for President Trump, having worked for Mayor Giuliani, a really good, unique insight into how both of these men operate. And you notice with President Trump, what really turned around, and I'm just going to talk blatantly political for a moment here with his poll numbers this week, is after this run where he started taking the podium and people started realizing he was in control. He was the one on the scene. A lot of that, to me, kind of reminded me of Mayor Giuliani after 9/11, when it was very clear that the buck stops here, that this is Mayor Giuliani was in charge, and not just New Yorkers, but people around the world could see Mayor Giuliani really in the hands-on. I think Governor Cuomo has done a very good job with this, of presenting that he is the one who is in command. He is directing all of his wartime generals at the state level of doing this. I think this is something that Mayor de Blasio should be mimicking, that he needs to be that beacon that New Yorkers are looking to and saying, here's what we're doing in the city. A lot of these things, as we heard Mayor Giuliani walk through this, look, I was both heartened, but then also scared at certain points of what we heard from Mayor Giuliani. I'll tell you why. Heartened by the fact that there are so many resources and plans and things that are available that we never would have known. A little bit scared that those messages aren't getting out there. So like this Dr. Bokvar from Lenox Hill Hospital, like Mayor Giuliani said, someone like that should be getting a phone call overnight with, let us fill you in and make sure we're on the same page. That coordination has to start happening.
Yeah, that's what I remember last night. It was really in the evening. Jump in, Jack.
I took something away from this a little bit more simple, and it's something we've been talking about since day one. Really, I think Hatfield was the one who brought it up as 3 Seconds to Midnight is sort of a guidebook for this, which is that the state and local authorities have to dust off their plans. This is why it's critical that the states that have not declared states of emergency should do it. And this is so that they can ramp up the same kind of communications that Rudy Giuliani was talking about. States need to coordinate with the feds, and they need to coordinate with each other.
This is exactly what Hatfield said, I think, in the first or second episode back in January, that the reason you wanted to declare local emergencies was a simple fact. It got people to bring the playbook out, what Rudy talked about. It got the playbook out, and you realize, hey, we're missing this is outdated, or people really aren't that coordinated. And I think that's what you got to – now, here's the problem. this is game day. You can't practice. You can't do reps. There's no time to do reps. You're game day now, and you gotta. That's why coordination is everything. And listen, what happens in New York City is going to drive what happens in the United States. It's just as simple as that. Okay, I want to go now to. We're going to shift gears shortly. By the way, I think Rudy on Monday we'll be back at 5 o'clock. I want to thank the WABC.
He'll be 4 to 5.
He'll be 4 to 5.
Yeah,
He's
on
at
WABC.
We're having it's a Rudy special from 4 to 5. And so we're going to pull quotes. We're going to pull that, and we'll comment on it, etc. So it's Mayor Giuliani on 4 to 5 on Monday on 77 WABC, and then War Room Pandemic, a New York City special report. We'll be going all week next week. We'll be at 5 o'clock. Okay, I want to bring in. We want to go back and talk about the economics of this. Talk about how we're going to get through this. How are people going to get paychecks? How businesses are not going to go out of business. You got both the economic crisis that you got the drop in aggregate demand. You also have now the financial crisis. I want to bring in now Jason Trennert from, and I always get this wrong, strategist?
Yeah, that's it. That's
okay.
Close enough.
Close enough, God. And I was on our communications director saying, hey, I pronounced
it's impossible. I don't know why I named the company that all those years ago. I could have picked something simpler, but it's Strategus.
Strategus. Yeah. Okay, Jason, here's the thing. They got an editorial on the editorial page. Yesterday they went after Trump and Cuomo and everybody. Cuomo and de Blasio. They were picking on Governor Cuomo and Mayor de Blasio. Today they're picking on the Secretary of Treasury, Steve Mnuchin. And the thing out is that they think there's a team that's come together on the pandemic side. And what they're positing is that, hey, they're getting clear guidance, and maybe it's not all the actions you want, but you can kind of see directionally where they're going. Yet on the economic crisis and the financial crisis, both this kind of this bridging event for this drop in aggregate demand about how do you make sure everybody gets a paycheck, then coupled with the problem in the capital markets, they think it's very muddled guidance. What say you, sir?
Yeah, listen, I think I'm hesitant. I have to say, I read the op-ed piece this morning. I'm hesitant to criticize the administration partly just because, and you worked there, I never worked there, but we both know some of the same people. We know they're working 18 hours a day to try to fix this. I think if you read the op-ed, really, I think what they're criticizing more is the communication rather than the actions, because some of the actions that both the Federal Reserve and the administration are taking are pretty extraordinary. Federal Reserve in particular, I'm not sure that the communication has been, they're not showboating, but cutting Fed funds rate by 100 basis points, starting a commercial paper facility, buying municipal bonds, backstopping money market funds, all those things, those are monumental actions that the Fed is taking, and they're appropriate. What they probably should be shouting it a little bit more from the rooftops that they're actually doing these things. And I think, and I have some sympathy, again, not knowing how it works, it's probably pretty hard to hammer out $1 trillion stimulus package and then also have a press conference about it while you're doing that. But I would say better coordination in terms of the communication would be helpful, because I think a lot is happening. And the last thing I would say is I think one of the things we're hearing about the stimulus package next week that is not getting enough attention is the extent to which they're going to really try to help out small businesses and speed the way in which they can get loans from their local banks, not through the SBA.
I want to go to this. We have advocated on this show, and we take pride in that most of what we advocate, eventually people end up doing. It'd just be nicer if they did it when we originally advocated. We advocated now weeks ago. You have to bifurcate that working group up there into a Pence-directed the doctors, the CDC, the NIH, Dr. Fauci, all that, and you have to bifurcate it. You have to have an economic task force that's running parallel, that deals with the economic crisis and deals with the financial crisis on top of that. And they have their own briefing, they have their own communications, because it's a separate – they're inextricably linked, but they are separate in the way people kind of think about them or how you have to communicate. What would you support that idea?
I agree with Steve. I agree with that completely, and it really, because the markets are essentially acting. The equity market, in particular, is acting as the vigilante for this action, right? It's forcing, in some ways, it's driving. The action was not the worst thing, but I think what you're seeing, just somebody who's watching the market staring at a screen all day long, is that yesterday was a perfect example where markets seemed to find some footing on Thursday and in the morning on Friday. Then Governor Cuomo comes out and says we're going to lock the state down, and the market just tanks. And I think there's a distinction that the market is making between, again, the health crisis, but also people are quite worried, I think, in the markets. And again, the markets are harsh. They can deal with the health crisis. What the markets are dealing with now is the idea that you're going to shut the entire economy down, even though that might be the right thing to do from a health perspective. That kind of demand shock is not like anything we've ever seen. We've never seen by fiat governments encouraging people not to spend money or engage in economic activity. So that's what the market is grappling with now, and I think better communication on the economic side would be very helpful.
I know you're very close, and you know, and you visit, and you're very close to people in Italy. But aren't we? And you see New York City today. You see these headlines in the Daily Mail. You see the report last night on CNBC by the head of neurosurgery at Lenox Hill Hospital, which is one of the finest hospitals in the city and therefore the world. Aren't we in a phase that we're kind of, because the numbers were following Italy to the T? Aren't we kind of doing the half measures? Remember, Italy tried to shut this down. They tried to quarantine 12 cities in Lombardy. They tried to shut down Milan during Fashion Week. They tried these measures that turned out in hindsight to be half measures. And now Italy, they had 627 people die last night. Italy's in a full meltdown. The Italian banks are all going to collapse. The society and economy over there is going to collapse, and because they took half measures. Wouldn't the market respond here if you had more bold, dramatic action and just say, hey, look, if it's about shutting down aggregate demand for 30 days or 60 days, hey, I can see a 60 days, and it may be a $3 trillion number. I don't know what the number is, but you plug for the equation on aggregate demand, and then you deal with the capital markets with having Treasury. You'd go back to the Yellen, Warsh, Bernanke op-eds in the FT and the Financial Times that said, hey, merge the balance sheets of the Fed and the Treasury and deal with the solvency crisis separately. Isn't that the solution here?
Well, Steve, I don't know, but I will say that I am very much in agreement with the idea that whatever you decide to do in terms of the economy or in terms of shutting it down and aggregate demand down, if you make that decision, it has to be simultaneously paired with an economic plan to that people understand will be essentially a bridge loan or something that will stem the tide. I very much agree with that. The problem now is that in some ways you're getting two different messages. Again, you have state governors that are shutting their economies down, and then you have the administration, which is trying to deal with something that they don't have complete control. So that I very much agree. I'm not sure, again, I don't know enough in terms of the health issues of this, but as far as the market is concerned, I'm very much in agreement that there has to be a coordination of the health plan as well as the economic plan. Because, again, I think the market was bottoming at one point this week. Once you start seeing large economies shut down, people say, listen, I have no idea where this is going to end, and you're going to be playing catch up as far as the stimulus that you need to bridge the gap.
I want to ask you to stay over if you could. We got a short commercial break. The reason I want to talk about Italy for a second, because I know you know Italy, and Italy is a paradigm here we must focus on. Okay, so Jason Trennert of Strategis. I'm going to get this right eventually. Okay, you're in the war room. This is 77 WABC. We're also on John Fredericks nationwide. We're on the Dish Network, channel 219, the America's Voice.news crowd out in Colorado. I want to thank the team out there for co-producing this with us. Also Newsmax TV. So we're ubiquitous. Also on podcasts, over 4 million downloads now throughout the world on shortwave and medium wave radio, and picked up on FM, AM stations throughout the Middle East, Africa, Latin America, India. We get comments every night on Nexus.org. I want to thank everybody for being part of the show. Hashtag War Room Pandemic. We want to hear your observations, your comments, your criticisms, most importantly, your snippets of turn with Jason Trennert, 77 ABC, in just a second.
War Room. Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room. Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
77 WABC. This is War Room Pandemic, New York City special report, 21st of March, the year of our Lord 2020. Our guest is Jason Trennert, one of the top minds on Wall Street. First off, I want to ask quickly about Italy. Give us your economic assessment of where Italy stands and what is its future.
Well, listen, Steve. To me, the biggest casualty of what's happening now could be globalization, and I think ultimately, if you're not careful, the euro. And I think one of the things that has been, I think, hopeful is that Germany has and Brussels, I think in conjunction, have decided to relax some of the budgetary restrictions that had been on Italy and some of the southern Mediterranean countries. So, but if this isn't right now, there's an enormous amount of sadness in the country. It's not difficult to imagine that turning into a lot of anger, especially with regard to decisions being made very far away, not necessarily in Rome, but being made in Brussels and Berlin and all the rest of it. So I think, listen, the situation is dire. You have 60 million people that are basically shut down economic activity. Tourism is a big part of the economy, as are textiles and other things. So, it's not good. The good news, I would say, is the ECB and the Eurozone and Germany are rapidly approaching the whatever it takes moment that we saw with Draghi in 2012.
Let me ask you real quickly, the New York Stock Exchange, the physicality of it will be shut down. They'll trade electronically on Monday. How do you think that will affect operations for the tri-state area for people? And number two, do you advocate that maybe we take like a bank holiday, that we actually close the markets for some period of time so you stop this shredding of assets on a global basis?
Yeah. So as far as the first question is concerned, I just have some experience. I have a little company. We have 3 traders at our company, 50 people. We set up stations at their homes last weekend. Our technology team did a great job of getting that, and frankly, I was amazed at how well it worked. And so that's just a small company, but I think so much of the trading on the New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, obviously is done electronically to begin with, that I'm pretty confident this is going to work pretty well in the final analysis. So I'm not particularly worried about that. I have to say, Steve, I don't want to be overly doctrinaire about this. I'm not a big fan of in this instance of like a market holiday or a bank holiday or even restrictions on short selling. I think the markets have an important role to play here, and in some ways that role can be perhaps getting politicians to do the right thing. When the dust settles, though, I very much do think there has to be a very strong look at fast market timing and some of the market timing and other things that have been doing that really, I think, destabilize some of the markets. Perhaps you reinstitute an uptick rule, things along those lines, because there are real market structure issues, I would argue, that are being exposed right now.
Jason, we got to bounce. I got 30 seconds for you. The $1.1 trillion is up on Capitol Hill that all weekend they're going to work on. Is that enough? Is it directionally correct? What's your assessment of that?
It's directionally correct. We've if you look at GDP is about $22 trillion. If you add up all the industries that are going to close, be shut down, you're looking at about 10% of GDP, or about $2 trillion. And so it's directionally correct. It might actually have to be larger. Might be something more like $2 trillion before it's all over. But it's directionally correct.
Jason Trennert from Strategist, thank you very much. One of the top minds on Wall Street. WABC 77, WABC in New York City. This is War Room Pandemic, the New York City Special Report. We're going to return for our next hour in just a moment.